heard a great story once to get across the point that the Earth really is alive. If you were to interview a butterfly standing on the branch of a sequoia tree, now a butterfly lives only for a few days, and a sequoia tree can live for over 1,000 years. If you were to ask the butterfly, do you perceive the object on which you're standing as being alive? The butterfly would say, of course not. I've been here all my life, which is all 5 days, and the tree hasn't done a thing. Well, it's the same problem with the human being. If you were to ask a person, perhaps one that's lived for over 100 years, they perceive the Earth, which is really 5 billion years old, as being alive, they'd say, of course not. I've been here my whole life, and it hasn't done a thing.
The illusion that we create and call it.
What does liberty mean to you? Being free to make as much money as you can? Being free to pursue the American dream? Could it be that the pursuit of wealth and status to the exclusion of all else is creating a sickly and unsustainable society? And what of your personal freedom? Do you find yourself wishing for more time with your family, your friends, for yourself?
Things that really irritate me out there is, when people talk about success. Success means you're making money. And I'm thinking, I'm not unsuccessful. I've just never tried to make a lot of money.
Money controls access to everything else. You want a roof over your head, you need money. You want food in your belly, you need money.
The U.S. culture, or lack thereof, is making a lot of people ill. It's making people outright crazy and unhealthy and unhappy.
A person is rich in proportion to things one can afford to leave alone. And so there's a lot of things I just choose and have chosen to leave alone, and I feel quite wealthy because of it.
Some of us believe in a different type of liberty. We believe that the many are more important than the few. And we believe that there is an alternative.
And people say, oh, well, so you just live in poverty out in the woods. I'm like, yeah, except you don't have 1,000 acres of land to run around in. You don't have a creek in your backyard. You can't walk around on your streets at night. You don't even have health care. You don't have job security. You can't just go learn a new skill because you want to. That's a kind of wealth that most Americans don't have.
There are alternatives to the rat race of mainstream culture. In the 1960s, a whole generation turned on, tuned in, and dropped out. They were called hippies. For many of them, traveling up and down Route 66 was a sacred rite of passage. The counterculture movement of the Vietnam era sought out new ways to organize society. Many were disenchanted with the state of the world and attempted to break with the mainstream. Thousands of communes sprung up across the United States in a short period. People were moving back to the land in search of meaningful experiences and sustainable values. Trouble is, they didn't find what they were looking for. These city kids with high aspirations didn't anticipate the amount of work and sacrifice that would be required of them to carve out a new life in the country.
Yeah, there were hundreds of people starting hippie communes all over the country. Very, very few of them lasted for more than a short amount of time because it's a lot more work and it takes a lot more thought. And it's a struggle, just like any other social change is a struggle. And everybody that was coming into this was all bringing the baggage of their upbringing with them.
The great majority of these experiments failed, and the hippies fell in line. They got jobs, moved up the corporate ladder, and started families. But for a determined and serious few, the dream of communal living became a lasting reality. We're traveling along Route 66, nearly 3,000 kilometers of historic tarmac that once stretched from Los Angeles to Chicago. If you head south from St. Louis into rural Missouri, you'll find a community that's been around for over 40 years.
My name is Sumner. This is where I live. Welcome to Eastwind.
Eastwind is a community of more than 70 people who believe, oddly enough, in sharing. We come from all walks of life and certainly have our differences, but there are a few things that unite us.
We work together to make the community. We don't really have any bosses in the same sense as business, traditional business on the outside.
One of Eastwinder's favorite things to say is, "Don't tell me what to do." So yeah, in that sense, everybody's their own boss. It's really nice to not have to take orders from other people.
The biggest part that resonates with me is just the communal aspect of people being with each other and working for one another. I feel like a lot of people have my back, you know, are taking care of me, and I'm helping take care of people, and it feels a lot more connected.
Some might call us a hippie commune, and it is true that Eastwind's origins are intertwined with the counterculture movement of the 60s. But we prefer to call ourselves, quite simply, an income-sharing community. And in fact, most of us wouldn't consider ourselves to be hippies.
Probably identify more with being a hillbilly than a hippie. I mean, we live in the woods, we grow our own food, we don't really enjoy being in town too much, stuff like that.
I don't know. I never have really. I don't know what a hippie is. It's just sort of a stereotype. And I'm not a stereotype, I think for myself.
I don't think it's useful to like filter my actions through a pre-decided persona. I think if I like called myself a hippie, then I would have to like do things that a hippie does and wear clothes that a hippie wears, and that's not like conducive to personal growth.
I don't know. I don't think I really even know what a hippie is. Like my mama makes jokes and says that my son's like the first black hippie, but I don't know.
I think people throw around that term in reference to people who wear a certain clothing or like being close to the earth. I do love wearing tie-dye. I do love the Grateful Dead. I do love gardening. I do love doing yoga. I mean, I don't know. I'm a human being.
If there is one idea that unites our community, it is income sharing. Each member of Eastwind is provided with their own room, home-cooked meals, and all necessities. And how can we afford to do all this, you might ask? By engaging in trade with the broader capitalist economy. It started out with handmade hammocks, and in 1981, Eastwind Nut Butters was started. Today, Eastwind Nut Butters is our primary source of income, but we also make, for example, handmade sandals, amongst other things. The business is at a size that is sustainable for our community. It provides well for us. The nut butter business grosses a couple $1 million a year and ships product all over the country. Each business has managers, I myself am one of them, that are elected by community members on a yearly basis.
We work 35 hours a week here, right? But that includes almost everything, like cooking and cleaning and laundry and taking care of the car. Everything that needs to be done gets collectively taken care of by the 35 times 73 hours a week. So your time outside of that is actually free. Like I don't have to cook or clean outside of that 35 hours.
The income sharing aspect and everything is making a strong political statement. It's like that we don't like the way things are done in the rest of society. We don't like this whole capitalist economy where you either sink or swim. We want to give everybody a chance.
If there was an alternative way to make a living, we would be. But there isn't, and there's not. We have to pay taxes. We have to pay health care. It's because we can't live in a microcosm. We aren't, this ain't a spaceship, and we're not in it by ourselves.
The nut butter business is Eastwind's cash cow, and profits pay for food, utilities, and are reinvested in other areas of the community, such as the dairy farm. Jeremiah, one of Eastwind's ranch managers, has worked these pastures for the past 6 years. He used to work for a chemical company, but after being laid off twice, he decided to pursue his passion for raising animals.
I just figured I'd try something a little kooky and crazy, have a little last adventure, and found out about communities still existing, came here, and fell in love and haven't left yet. I love it, it's great, and I've really grown a lot being here. I've come to, every day you learn something new. I've been here over 7 years, and I'm just starting to have a clue. But I've never been so happy. Up, up, up.
Leftover peanut skins from the nut butter factory supplement the cow's feed, and those who work in the dairy know each one by name. Today is a cause for celebration. One of the Herefords has just given birth.
It just keeps calling you back. I can see why the people who originally started to do it, why it was so important, and why all these different cultures or the origins and most religions come from cattle worshippers. That's where the civilization started. That's what the Vedic religion and Egyptian religions and even the Hebrew or pastoral lifestyles and came from cattle worshippers. So I can see why that was so important, like being in some of these harsher environments and these cattle bringing you to water and providing you with milk and enough calories to last you throughout the year, and all you had to do was take care of them or whatever. So
Homegrown, nutrient-dense food is very important for many Eastwinders. The cows give us milk and meat, and our gardens provide fresh produce throughout the year. We're not completely self-sufficient, but we try and produce as much food as we can. And for Earth Pig, today that means going on a squirrel hunt. To be a good squirrel hunter, you need to know how to move quietly. You have to be observant, and above all, you need to be patient. Earth Pig spots a squirrel in a nearby tree. She makes the shot. But it wasn't a clean kill. The squirrel escapes. We don't like the idea of animals suffering, and so the hunt continues.
It took me a while here to get over the just being disgusted by meat, because I was vegan and vegetarian for so long. Eventually I started eating the animals that I killed, and I got really into squirrel hunting.
Back at the dairy, Boone is working on making some mozzarella.
So cheese making 101 is You bring your milk up to usually 90 degrees and you introduce a culture. In my case, I'm using thermophile C. You let it sit, you let the bacteria propagate itself, and then you'll cut the curd into cubes, which release whey. It's black magic. I'm still figuring it out. Like, you do one thing a little bit different and it's all different. And then, yeah, it's trickier than I would have thought.
Like many Eastwinders, Boone engages in a wide range of interests. His job description includes milking, cheese making, working in the nut butter business, and he's also Eastwind's resident dance instructor.
The hooks of mainstream society, they run deep, so it took me almost 10 years to finally break free and quit and decide to look for community.
Boone walked away from a successful career in the city and gave it all up to be closer to nature.
If you live in, say, New York City, you're going to have very little contact with the natural world. Everything is man-made. It's all angles and concrete and steel, and I mean, food exists in the grocery store. It's not something you see grow or be produced. Collectively, we as a species have lost, we're out of balance. We're no longer in balance, and Mother Earth is letting us know louder and louder that we can't keep doing what we've been doing, and who knows if we'll listen.
Deborah is one of the original founders of Eastwind.
I was sweet 16 in the summer of love and rock and roll and, the civil rights movement and the women's movement and anti-nuke movement and anti-war movement, and it was very exciting times. The biggest solidarity, as I recall, or in my mind, and many other people's too, wasn't so much that we had some grand idea of a better way to live. We more knew what we didn't want than we knew what we wanted. We didn't want to work 9-to-5 jobs. We didn't want to get married to one person for the rest of our lives and live in the suburbs with 1.2 cars in the garage and 2.3 children. We knew what we didn't want to do.
When the hippie movement fizzled out in the 1970s, most people abandoned the idea of communal living and rejoined the mainstream. But here at Eastwind, the social experiment in communal living continues.
When you live with all these people, their true insides come out. When you live in Babylon, you wake up and you spend time putting on the mask that you're going to walk out into the world with, and you choose when you interact with people and what part of you that they're going to see, and you don't get that here. All of the emotional damage that modern day capitalism does to people is it's not gone here. It's not. There's definitely as much healing here as you can push it, there's as much healing as you will allow yourself to heal.
I think the most effective thing, any average person can do is just to say, I'm not going to participate anymore and unplug, which is what I've tried to do. I mean, we're just, to be clear, we're very much still plugged into the system. We run a multi-million-dollar business to support ourselves, but at the same time, we live below the poverty line. We grow a lot of our own food. We're far more self-sufficient than most, and we still enjoy a good quality of life, which I think is important.
So, I mean, I don't think I'm not, apocalypse is coming person, but I mean, it's if you look at kind of what's unfolding around us. I mean, I don't, think, the world is going to suddenly end, but I mean, you look at all other societies, you look at the Roman Empire, how they rose and fall. I mean, the Roman Empire thought that they were going to conquer the world, and that's kind of, I think, similar to how people in our society tend to think, things are just going to keep on going more and more like they have been, but more so. And then what actually happened was totally different. It wasn't the end of the world kept on going, but changed a lot.
Some of our members choose to have children and raise them in the community, and they aren't in any hurry to rejoin the outside world.
Yeah, having kids here is wonderful. It's really nice to be able to go harvest fresh greens with my kid from the garden or bake fresh bread, and of course it's wonderful that both me and his dad can be around all the time to really have a lot of say over his life.
It's a very American experiment. And it's nothing new in history. And it's nothing new in this country. Before the American Civil War, there was a lot of experiments like this.
That's definitely one of the biggest things for me, like being out there, the constant sense of competition with everything and with everyone, you know, and it takes away from just being with your neighbors, or, you know, like it really takes away from like the human experience, you know.
You know, I come from like a much darker place, like a much more like violent neighborhood, and I felt like I was always trying to escape, always trying to do something else, and not be around like such like hostile energy. And like getting to a place like this where there's like so much like love and sharing and stuff going on, I was like, this is it, this is cool. I'm cool with this.
Life brings many joys, but it's not without its struggles. Summertime in the Ozarks means ticks and poisonous snakes. In the winter, it can get pretty cold, and working outdoors becomes more difficult. Living in harmony with dozens of independently minded people can be a challenge.
Oh, this lifestyle really isn't for everybody. Because I don't think most people would consider the sacrifices they would have to make worth the benefits of those sacrifices. Or they don't want to make that trade-off. And we see that here all the time. Cooperation sounds easy until you don't get what you want. Then it doesn't sound so easy anymore.
One of the biggest misconceptions is that this is you know, a bunch of hippies that are just hanging out and you know, frolicking in the sun, having an idyllic life. That's not the truth. This is not utopia. This is 73 people trying to work and live together. We have to work through conflicts and differing interests.
I'm going to get a little transcendental here, but the way I like to see it is reality is a big diamond in the sky. And we're all looking at the same reality, but we all see it a little differently because each person is positioned a little differently in space. We're all seeing things a bit distorted. It just depends where the observer is looking at the object being observed. And the big object is reality.
The reality for us here is that life can be hard. Eastwind has endured as much as any other community in over 40 years of existence. We're not out to start a revolution. We're being the change we want to see.
Again, I don't think fighting it is worthwhile. There's too much power and momentum there, but it'll fall apart under its own weight, you know, relatively soon probably. And hopefully places like this will be around to like grow something new when it does.
I wonder if a lot of people are very curious and very excited about a different way of life. I mean, I think when people hear about getting to stay home with your children all day, getting to live on such a large piece of land, getting to have a relaxed working environment, I mean, it's wonderful. Getting to eat great organic food, you know, I mean, those are all wonderful things. So
I do hope what I'm doing is, you know, in this whatever small way, changing the world, but I also am not trying to, I don't want to try to, you know, force the world to be a particular thing, because none of us really knows what, I mean, you know, all of us have ideas that we think, you know, are good.
That if you really want an alternative, there are ways to get it. You can manage your own business. You can buy your own land. You can build your own houses. You can work on your own cars. You can find a safe environment to raise your children in. You can grow your own food. You can have freedom and security even in this mess of cultural devastation out there.
Perhaps the real thing that we all have in common is that we all made a decision to change how we live and how we interact with the world around us. The very existence of our social experiment is a challenge to the rat race of capitalist society. We're rejecting the idea that greed is good. In a complex world, we choose simplicity, and we're reaping the benefits.